Welcome back to the Broncast podcast, all about the Ford Bronco. I'm your host, John Melton.
And I'm Donnie Whiteman.
We are a couple Bronco enthusiasts who own Broncos, work on Broncos, just love talking about Broncos from Generation 1 all the way through Generation 6. Our sponsor for this episode is Tom's Off-Road. Tom's Off-Road has every part that you need to fully restore your Ford Bronco. Now today, Donnie, we're not sitting at a table with amazing mics in our face. Today we're going to talk about something pretty cool. We're going to talk about steering geometry on the Early Bronco. And I do have to say, if you're listening to this episode, you may want to hop over to YouTube and actually watch it, because there's probably going to be some good stuff that we're going to talk about and you're going to want to see it.
Yeah, we got two old Broncos here and we got 2 or 3, 5. How many things are we going to talk about?
7. I don't know.
That's your magic number.
10. All right, so let's start with this.
The first place we're going to check for the steering is in the engine bay. So we're going to start here by looking at the steering column, the steering shaft. Okay, John, go ahead and move the wheel. Looks like we got some spark plug wires in the way. But you can see right here, the shaft is moving up and down, and that bearing is completely blown out at the bottom of the steering column. And then this rag joint right here is dry rotted, so it looks to be okay, could be replaced. The shaft is solid. Down here we have a universal joint at the column, which appears to be okay. And you can see down there below, we've got the Pitman arm moving left and right. So I don't see the steering box right here moving left and right. A lot of times you'll see that those bolts that hold the steering box in will be worn out, the holes in the frame, and we've had to weld those up before and make them round again. But the thing that looks the worst here is the steering column at the bottom bearing, probably at the top too. If one's bad, they're both bad.
All right, so now we're under the Bronco and you want to do the same thing, have someone saw the steering wheel back and forth, and you want to look at a bunch of spots under the Bronco. Here at the tie rod ends, here where the tie rod and drag link meet, here where the Trac Bar meets the axle. You probably actually want to remove your steering stabilizer for this part, just because the steering stabilizer could mask any excessive play. You want to look at where the Trac Bar meets the frame. Then you want to look at your Pitman arm, where the Pitman arm goes to the drag link, and then your tie rod end on the driver's side. So our tie rods look good. If they were bad, you would see movement in the tie rod. Where the drag link and the tie rod come together, that looks good. I'm not seeing any movement. What would happen is this would rotate up and down. Our Trac Bar looks really good. This bolt will actually separate from the axle and it'll start to shift back and forth right here. Moving down, Trac Bar looks good. Up top, I don't see any movement in the bushing up there. That means that's snug and not moving a whole lot. This, the Pitman arm looks good. It looks like there's not a lot of movement there. And this tie rod all the way down there looks good. So everything under the Bronco looks pretty good, but I'm actually noticing right here, I'm seeing just a little bit of movement in the steering box. And I know Donnie said that he didn't see any, but there's just a little bit, which can sometimes mean that your frame is starting to crack and the stress from the steering box is actually starting to move your frame. So something to check. It's not a lot of movement. There's more movement in the engine bay, but everything underneath looks really good and really tight. All right, Donnie, so this is my truck and we just took a look at a different one that is a little bit more stock. Where mine, I have the Heim joint under here, or I have the Heim steer. So it's a little bit different, but one of the key factors, like if you've checked all of your, the ball joints and the bushings and everything's good, everything's tight like it was under the brown one, then checking the parallelness, is that the word, parallelness, of your Trac Bar and your drag link. Like that's the next thing. And if these two aren't parallel, what you're gonna start to feel is your axle is going to kind of rock under the truck as you're driving down the road. So it's like you'll hit a bump And instead of the wheels, bouncing up and down together, they'll kind of bounce like, they do this like sway kind of thing where they bounce and sway. It's lovely. It's poetry, really. I mean, it's beautiful. Poetry in motion. But it's because if you look, where this is going to bounce is actually at an arc, because it's not going to bounce straight up and down. It's going to bounce at an arc. So what you want is you want them to bounce together, and you want them to be parallel so they do bounce together. Now, if you don't have them parallel, if they aren't, looking like this when it's stretched out on a lift, there's a couple different things that you can do. Tom's Off-Road has a Pitman arm, a drop Pitman arm, where it actually will lower your drag link. And so that could get your track bar and drag link closer together. They also have a drop track bar bracket that kind of, I think it like just bolts into that one. I don't know. Do you weld it? Do you know?
No, it literally bolts right over that one.
You could do that and get that lower. Now Tom's doesn't offer this. I forget where I got it, but I actually have a track bar riser that actually lifts up the track bar from the axle. And that's how I got this correct steering geometry. But I could have done any number of those things. So you want to look at your truck and just kind of look under there and figure out what's going to work best for you and what's going to work best, getting those two parallel.
Well, while we're talking about suspension, we should also talk about caster, camber, and toe. Since on a Bronco, it's an older vehicle, it's not going to have any camber adjustment.
Right.
But you can adjust the toe and the caster. So toe, one way to adjust that is by rotating your steering rod arms, and you can adjust the wheel in or out this way. All Broncos want a little bit of toe in.
That's the front wheels pulling in.
Yeah, like pigeon toe, right? Versus toe out. If you don't have toe in on a Bronco, you're gonna have your truck wanting to go left and right all the time.
Right.
It's just gonna be squirrely. And when you get it right, it'll go down the road just perfectly straight.
And that's totally something that you could do, like take it to an alignment shop and have them do it. Now, I will say a lot of alignment shops won't touch an old vehicle like this. Like if you just go to, I don't know, Firestone Auto or whatever, like a lot of them won't touch it. And a lot of them don't know how, because it's like the machine doesn't hook up to it. But if you go somewhere like the co-op, and so you could go to the co-op and get your alignment done, because they know how to do it, more mechanical. They do it really well and precise, but you can also do it at home. There's a ton of YouTube videos. I think I made a YouTube video about it. But basically, you take the width of your tire. There's a 35-inch tire. So where it's 35 inches back here, you measure to the other tire, and 35 inches up here, and you just want that to be like a quarter of an inch difference, like
towed in.
Yeah. Like that's all it is. It's like a quarter of an inch. So I did it. I made this like ghetto thing that sat on the frame, and I like screwed my wheel nuts in and like did it. I mean, it worked, but not perfect, but don't watch my YouTube video about it, but watch someone else's that knows how to do it.
I bought an alignment tool from Trick Tools, and you take the wheels off and you put it on the rotors, and it literally has measurings at the front and the back to measure across. And what it does is it tells you, doesn't give you degrees, but it'll give you, measurements. And you can see that, okay, I've got the front wheels in a little bit. It's perfect. And when you go and drive it, you'll know.
Caster is the other part of this, which honestly you should go to an alignment shop and get them to give you the caster reading, because that's going to tell you where your caster number is at. And basically caster, you help me explain this, is where the center of, where basically the connection point to hold the axle in place is coming down from the truck. And so if you have positive caster, it's this way, negative caster is this way. Is that about right?
What happens is, if you think of this as a giant caster wheel, like on the bottom of your chair,
Yeah.
you know, it wants to wobble around when you go real fast. Well, you want just the right amount of caster. So your wheel should be behind this imaginary line of your suspension.
Yeah.
If it's in front, you won't be able to drive your truck. So
Yeah. And it'll dart the same way if
it'll be
as
super
your toe.
squirrely, yeah.
And so they make, here's a very old C bushing. You can tell because it's so easy to squish. Hey, Donnie, how about some caster? Okay, but like this is what determines your caster on a Bronco. This is called a C bushing because it's in the letter C. And that goes on your axle, and it basically, there's two of them that go front and back, but Tom's Off-Road has a 2-degree C bushing, which is about stock, a 4-degree C bushing. So if you have a little bit of a lift, you may need a 4-degree C bushing, or a 7-degree C bushing, which is quite a bit. I actually have a 7-degree C bushing on this, and I have -4 degrees of caster. So whatever happened somewhere, I had +3 degrees of caster. And so I needed all 7, because 4 degrees is right where you kind of want to be on a Bronco. If you go to an alignment shop, that's what they'll tell you. I needed the 7-degree C bushing to actually get that pulled back to where it needed to be.
Well, and if you get all of that done, and you might as well replace these. These are some really nasty, crusty radius arm bushings
Super
at the back.
nasty.
So if you replace all the stuff in the front and don't replace these,
Yeah.
your arms can move around back there, which moves your whole axle. It's what's holding the axle. It's like 2 arms.
Totally.
So these, believe it or not, they were completely blown out, and he hits his brakes and the truck wants to go right or left, and the axle's just doing this.
Yeah,
turning
those
on
are
its own.
completely
Yeah.
worn out. And speaking of kind of moving down the Bronco, the next place that you would want to check, surprisingly enough, is actually the U-bolts that are holding your rear axle. Like those U-bolts need to be, okay, I think we talked about this the other day, like 95 foot-pound.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It
It's a
depends
lot.
on the size of the bolt. The
Yeah,
bigger the bolt,
True.
it could be as high as 120 pounds.
Yeah. But you want to tighten those down so that they're snug, but make sure not to over tighten them, because with that U-bolt, if you start to over tighten it, it's going to actually egg shape your axle. And I've seen some people with the axle tube, like, and it just kind of smushes it down. So you want to get the right, know what U-bolts you have, know what your torque specs should be. But what happens is if those U-bolts are loose, when you're stopping, when you're going, when you're turning, you're going to feel that axle shifting.
And it starts to steer the truck.
It's like rear steer. Yeah, it's like crab walking, and it feels super weird. But you would think, if you didn't realize or think to check that, you would just think, something's going on with my steering. Like, my steering is super loose. What's happening?
Well, what's funny is if that's worn out and all the stuff's worn out in the front, you can get this thing called death wobble. I've worked on a couple trucks where they wouldn't drive them over 35, 40 miles an hour, their Bronco that they love. And they avoided chuck holes at all costs, because once that thing started going and shaking, you just like, you can't even hit the brakes because it gets worse.
Right.
You just have to like wait for it to stop.
Ride it out.
And ride it out and then dodge the rest of the chuck holes.
When I first got my Bronco, it would dart super hard when I would hit the brakes. Another thing to check just while we're standing here is actually your brake cylinders. I had a seized up brake cylinder. It was too small. It was for an 11-inch drum instead of a 10-inch drum. And so it moved in the brake drum when I would hit the brakes. And so one brake was grabbing super hard and pulling me.
Pitching the truck.
Over, So like, that's another thing that you want to check as well. But our last check is right in here inside the hub. Let's pull this tire off, and should we go that deep? Should we dive in? Do you guys actually want to see us
Down that rabbit hole.
go down this rabbit hole?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right. All right, so Donnie, we got the wheel and tire off. We've got the hub assembly out of it. This is one of my favorite parts of, like, I mean, we didn't show it on camera, but I just took this apart and Donnie was like, well, you've done this a couple times. And I have. Like this is something that, like, if you're changing your disc brakes or swapping 2 disc brakes, is something that you need to know. And it's something that I've talked about in my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel often. But basically what I've just pulled out is I've pulled out this is the spindle, and it goes inside of the hub right here. So I'm holding it in my hands. This is a different one, not the one that's on my Bronco. But your spindle nut, your spindle lock nut, goes on the spindle, you know, like so, and it tightens down. Well, there's 2 of these spindle lock nuts. I still have one in the hub. And in between the 2 spindle lock nuts is this lock nut washer, I guess you would call it. Right? Lock nut washer. And basically, the one of the spindle nuts goes on, and then this lock nut washer goes on, and it has this channel on the spindle that it has to fit in. And remember, this is all inside of this hub, very hard to see. And then the other lock nut goes on top of it. But the thing is, the first lock nut, when you put it on, it has a little, what do you call it? What is it have?
Locking ring.
Or no, the little thing tab that sticks up.
Oh.
On that goes, the
Okay.
first lock nut.
Keyway?
Keyway, no, not the keyway. That's the keyway, right?
Yeah.
No, the first, I always call it a nipple. I'm just trying to figure out what you call it. That would be more appropriate than calling it a nipple.
Dowel.
A dowel. Thank you. That's the clean mind, dirty mind. All right. So there's a dowel on the first lock nut that goes on there, and the dowel has to fit through one of the holes on your lock nut washer. Why am I talking about all this? Because if you have this too loose on your Bronco, you're gonna feel it shift as you're driving down the road, as you're turning, as the road is going one way or another, because literally your hub and rotor and your tire that attaches to it is going to be moving. Because what's happening is, like, there's just too much play in here, and so literally the whole assembly here is shifting as you're driving down the road.
This whole rotor is sitting on the hub, and between that and the actual knuckle itself are bearings, and this is actually preload. So right now, it's I would say maybe a little loose. So we'll have a torque spec on this where we can tighten this down. So if this is spinning, that's great, and so if I tighten it down, it won't spin anymore.
Right.
So what we're going to do is use our preload measurement on that, and this is where the locking ring comes into.
Yeah.
And we're going to just get this torque to a certain spec.
And it's not much. I mean, what is it, 50 foot-pounds?
45.
Like 45?
Yeah, something like that. So some 35, some 45. So once you get that on there, and then you back this thing off once you get to that preload, and then it spins again. Now we've got to make that locking ring with the dowel pin work with the locking ring and the keyway. So you'll have to actually adjust that a little bit to get it all to lock together. And what that locking ring does is keep this from coming off.
Right.
So you'll set the preload, back it off, like sometimes it's a quarter of a turn or less, and then you'll have what's called your bearing preload set so you don't ruin your bearings. And then we'll put the locking ring on, rotate it till they all fit together, and then you put your final ring on.
Yeah. We aren't going to do all that on camera. I just wanted to, like, break this apart and blow it apart so that you could kind of see it and go, oh, okay. So literally, we have just walked through everything that you should check to get your Bronco steering straight. So if you have death wobble, if you are, you know, if your steering is just super loose, like so many times people will first thing go straight to the steering box and crank down on that adjusting nut on your steering box. Don't do that. Notice that we didn't talk about that at all, because that's probably the worst thing you could do. Like, most likely it's something under here. It's your bushings. It's like, you know, your C bushings. Like, there's so many things to
Ball
check.
joints, bushings.
Yeah. Before you crank down that adjusting nut. I've never touched that thing, because if you turn it too tight, then like you're gonna turn the steering wheel and it's gonna all go boom inside that steering box. So yeah, so a lot of stuff to digest. If you're just listening to this and you're like, man, I don't even know what they're talking about because I can't see anything. Sorry about that. Go check out the YouTube video. But yeah, I mean, anything else? Final thoughts?
No, I'm with you. This is like some of the coolest engineering on the whole truck, the four-wheel drive locking hub.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing how easily that goes on.
Right.
You've just got like the 8 tiny bolts.
Yeah.
And you just click it left and right and it magically makes
Locks.
it lock into four-wheel drive. But once you start looking into it, it's actually pretty simple and cool.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be rebuilding a locking hub when you, for $250, you can buy, or less, I think $100 for the Toms, you can buy a set of them, put them in, and you're done, and they're brand new.
Yeah, this is essentially it. You know, it's like, all right, done. There you go. This is the old one. Tom's Bronco parts. Now, Tom's off-road. Cool, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for joining us in the shop talking about steering geometry.